she burnt this food, and enough is enough. She did it more than once to me. I couldn't believe it. The Rebbe would, like, blow a temper like this in public. A few of the Elter Chassidim were talking like this was in front of everyone. They felt terrible for the Rebbetzin. A few of the Elter Chassidim asked him, Shalom, if he wouldn't mind, we'll talk a little, if we could talk to the Rebbe a little bit in private. Try to talk a little Shalom Bayis talk in Rebbish. A few of the Elter Chassidim said, Take, the halacha is like this Hillel, I feel like Kedichet Avshiloi. But that's, if a person if you're getting along, Baruch Hashem, you're building a family together, just because she wants the Kedichet Avshiloi, you don't get divorced. Things are on rocks for a long time. It's not working out. Just because once she burnt the kugel, you're going to divorce her? He said, you know what? You guys are right. You're onto something. He says, Rebbeinu Shalom, listen to this. Listen, they're right. The Rebbeinu Shalom, the Yidden are yours. We've been doing something together for hundreds of years, now thousands of years. So a little bit the Kedichet Avshiloi, lately the Yidden Lechat Nishta, gekocht, they didn't do their job well. You're going to divorce us over this? What, you want to pick the Goyim instead? Wow. And the Chassidim understood that this was some kitrug that was against Klal Yisrael, and that the Sar Sholem had that koyach by playing out this thing between him and his Rebbetzin, that he had that power to affect things in heaven. So Chassidim came back to Tzemach Tzedek and they told him the story, and they asked him, is there such a thing in Chabad? They never saw such theatrics at the Maimorim of the Tzemach Tzedek. The Tzemach Tzedek says, by uns ist das alles mit der Teure. By us, the Nesiach Chabad, it's all through Torah, through the Maimori Chassidus. And the emphasis that we know, man, in our generation, there were people that were zoich to be at the famous Verbrengen Purim, Tavshin Yud Gimel, 1953. Rahman al-Islam, the Jews in Russia, where it was a terrible, terrible situation. It was the story of the doctors, the Russian doctors. 13 doctors are accused of trying to poison Stalin Yamach Shemoy. Later it was found out that this was just a ploy. Stalin Yamach Shemoy had already prepared the Azerbaijan, I'm not saying the name wrong, some Jan. Birebijan. Officially, this is going to be the Jewish utopia. But Rahman al-Islam, he only wanted all the Jews in one little place. Something me'ever lahorei achoshech. But in order to get, the Jews were so intermingled into society, and in every part of, in every factory, in every level of government. The Bolsheviks supposedly didn't discriminate against the Jews. They were in every level of government, in the KGB, in the secret police, in the military. There were highly decorated generals that were Jewish. How many thousands, tens of thousands of Jewish soldiers fell in the Second World War on the Russian side. So there were highly decorated soldiers and generals. So he had this ploy where he was going to have this public trial, and this was like, he controlled the media. So whatever was radio, was magazines, it was newspaper, it was a front page everywhere about, and there were editorials against the Jews. And this was going to be a few month campaign to get people mentally prepared to the fact that one day all the Jews are going to be forced.
We call it fake news.
Yeah, the real news. So the Rebbe at that time, there was a Fabrengen, the usual Purim Fabrengen, and the Rebbe told a story of the Rebbe Rashab, that after they killed the Tsar, there was, for a short time, there was elections in Russia. Democracy never works in Russia. If you think there's democracy now, you think again. So there was, for a few months, a thought that there'll be some sort of democracy. There was elections. and there was a lot of excitement. It was a big meeting of Gedolei Yisrael. They thought finally they could do something for Judaism. And the Rebbe Rashab instructed all the Chassidim, all from Eden, they should go out and vote. Just like today, all from politicians, Abonim, Askonim say that, it's important because politicians, all they care is about people to vote. If they know the amount of people that vote, that's what counts. If you're sitting at home, it doesn't count. Anyway, the Rebbe Rashab said to go vote. Every chassid went to vote. Here was a chassid, he knew nothing about politics, he never looked at a magazine, never read a newspaper, he knew nothing. The Rebbe Rashab said to vote, he went to the mikveh, he put on his gartel, he found out exactly where you go to vote. He was going to do exactly what the Rebbe Rashab said to do. So before he went in, he asked exactly for instructions, what was he supposed to do. When he came out of the ballot box, the voting poll, there was some group of Russians that were screaming and yelling. They were rallying for something, for one of the candidates, and they were saying, "Hooray! Russia, it's hurrah!" Chassid didn't know. He thought maybe that's part of the process. That's what you got to do. That's whole part of it. You go in, you write your name, you punch it here, and you go out and you start screaming. So he started screaming. He didn't know what it means, hooray, hurrah. So he thought it mean. What does it mean? He started screaming, "Hoorah! Hoorah! Hoorah! He's evil!" And the Rebbe said it 3 times, and the Rebbe made like a tnuah, that everyone got up on their feet and understood that the Rebbe meant that everyone should scream. Everyone got up on their feet and they screamed 3 times, "Hoorah!" 3 times, and right away the Rebbe started. And the whole mimer was one point, that in the level of Purim, there looks like there's no difference between the Gentile and the Jew. Why? Because at that level, it's like there is sin and no sin, zechus and no zechus are the same. But really, Ba'oya v'Yaakov, Esav Sanesi, on the deepest level, the Eibush loves Yaakov, despises Esav. 3 days later, the whole world found out that at that night, which was Leil Purim, Stalin died. One of the remarkable things in this, it's still a mystery how he died. His best friend Beria poisoned him, who later got shot in the head by Khrushchev, or Khrushchev, who shot Beria in the head, really poisoned him, and Beria was about to kill him. Who knows what? But just in a biography that I read about Stalin, there's a bazillion accounts about the story. So since there's no one story, so
What year is it?
53, 1953. So they said that he didn't die right away. He started to he ingested something maybe, and he started to cough.
He left them alone.
Yeah, but his assistant said, I should call Dr. Iskowitz. And his last words was, "No, never a Jewish doctor." According to this account. This is not a Chabad publication. I'm telling you a biography of Mr. Stalin. But yeah, he died already. He died that night.
But they
didn't know what to do. Khrushchev was busy figuring out, what he has to do first before he publicizes the death. The amazing thing is that this mimer was printed in Tafshinun Aleph. That was the height of the Iraqi war. Now, in every Chabad publication, there is a Pesach Dover, a few lines in the beginning from the publisher. Everything went through the Rebbe's eyes. Nothing was published in Kahas without the Rebbe's permission. They wrote that this mimer was said 1953 in connection with the special event that happened in 1770 with Chassidim was screaming hurrah, and Stalin Yamach Shemor, who was the Haman of his day, died. The Rebbe allowed it to be printed.
On his 13th.
What happened was, after he was killed, Khrushchev wanted to show that he's in advance. He's liberal. He's going to. First of all, the 13 doctors were let straight. It was right away announced that this was a ploy. The 13 doctors were allowed and this whole plan about expunging the Jews, Rahman al-Islam, from all of Russia was buried. In general, it was a new era for Russia. Things wasn't roses immediately, but immediately there were great changes. Many Hasidim that were in the gulags at that time were released. It wasn't just Hasidim. In general, they wanted to show that this Stalin was the evil, Khrushchev said, but I'm the great guy, Yeah, he's progressive, yeah. Khrushchev was he's a tzaddik.
He hit his shoe.
Tzaddik in the pills.
Hit it on the table.
So that was the word that the Rebbe said that by uns it happens through a Torah. The Rishimas, there's the Rishimas that they found at Rebbe's desk, and there's remarkable stories in there. There's a story about the Rebbe Marash, his son, the Rebbe Rashab, as a youngster, was called to the army. So the Rebbe Marash claimed that since my service to I'm a descendant of Rabbi Schneerson the first, who has a special recognition because he helped the Tsar win the war against Napoleon, and my son is my successor, that he doesn't have to be called to service. There was an anti-Semite who was the governor of this 13, there's like 50 states in the United States, there's 13 regions in Russia. So the governor of Vitebsk and that region, which Lubavitch was part of it, was a Sonny Yisrael, and he said, no, your son he's going to come here at the main office, the headquarters of the army, and he's going to wear a uniform for at least 24 hours. The Rebbe Marash said that's not going to happen. The Rebbe Marash went to Petersburg, and he had connections, and they sent a message down to the governor of Vitebsk that let go. On his way back from Petersburg, he stopped in Vitebsk and he said a maimer. In the middle of the maimer, he said just two words: Heichel HaNogav. Heichel HaNogav. That the Negev, the plague, just started. At that moment, the governor of Vitebsk was sitting in his mansion. All of a sudden, something happened. He got terribly ill, and everyone spoke about it at the Maimon. He sent a message to the Rebbe Marash, and he'd like to meet him, and he wants to apologize. The Rebbe Marash said, it's too late, it's over. 2 days later, he died. And the story that Rebbe writes in his Rishimas that he heard from his father-in-law. So we see that that's exactly what the Rebbe, that Tzemach Tzedek said, that we also do the same story, but not with the theatrics of, but rather through Torah. Why through Torah? But there was something special, that Torah changes the world. A person who, him and the Torah are one, so when this person learns Torah, and he declares Heichel HaNogav, he declares Hurrah, he declares in the Maimon that on the deepest level, Oyeves Yankeves Esav Sanesi, that the Eibusha says, I love the Jew and abhor the anti-Semite. So that changes the balance of power in the world, and Kipshuta, the anti-Semite, gets ill and he dies. Kipshuta. So here's a beautiful sicha Parshas Balak. So the Shiloh that I'm asking is simple. Gemara says that you're supposed to give Jewish children nice Jewish names. Shem Yisraim Yirkev. You're not Zecha Tzadik Lebrocha. When you mention a Tzadik's name, it's a Brocha. And Shem Yisraim Yirkev, that Loi Maskina Mishmayu. We don't name children. You don't find a good Jewish child named Nimrod. Why? Nebuchadnezzar. Why? Nimrod, Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuzaradan, Esau, exactly. But we find in the Torah, so we find Koirach. But Koirach is not Shakasha. Then he did Tshuva, he was screaming Moshe Emes, V'terosa Emes, a separate issue. But why would you use Balak? Why would you give Balak the honor that he should get? This shul has how many places? Every shul is filled with plaques. So if the shul has places for 13 plaques, Shul has places for 53 plaques. 53 seders. Every seder gets a name. Everyone wants his name on a seder. Why Balak? Give it to someone. I don't know. Give it to Pinchas. Give it to Elazar. Give it to Kole. Yeah, Pinchas, all right. If it's the first word of the seder, so Vayar Balak, Vayar. Just like there's a Chumash, Vayera. There's Vayera. It's gonna be Vayar, Vayetze. Nishkeferla. So what's so special? This is a very the Teuchen of the whole Parsha that Rambam describes in the last two parakim of the Yad HaChazakah is all about the coming of Mashiach, the prophecy of coming Mashiach. It's all wrapped into the prophecy of Bilam. Why would you give such an important Parsha? And true, Balak hired him, but that was like he hired him to curse, not to bless. So then it says there's another Gemara. The Gemara says in the Sanhedrin, the Gemara says that Kol Avodas, it says in the pasuk, Shem Elokim Acherem Lo Yisaskiru Lo Yishama Al Picha. You're not allowed to say names of an idol. The Gemara says, so how come in the Torah there's all kinds of names of idols in the Torah? Yesterday's Chitas. Avadat Am Kemosh. The Torah recounts how Bilam cursed the people of Moav, and he said, "Avadat Am Kemosh," the nation that serves the Avodah Zarah Kemosh, they lost the battle, and that's what happened. He predicted that they but so the Am Kemosh is Avodah Zarah all over the Torah. And this week's Parsha is going to be at the end of the Parsha. Next week's Parsha, Pa'or Bal Pa'or. There's all over. There is Avodah Zarah's name mentioned. The Gemara asked, "How can you have that?"
Any Avodah Zarah?
So the Gemara answers, no, you're not allowed to mention anything. The Gemara says you're not allowed to say Shmor li b'tzad avodah zarah ploinis. I want to meet you. Where are we going to meet? You know that church in the center of town and the other side of the church. You're not allowed to say that. You're not allowed to give any chashivus to avodah zarah. You're not allowed to say the name, and you're not allowed to use it as a landmark. You're not allowed to use it. Oh, the market, in the corner of the marketplace, like in Europe, the old cities, and not necessarily so the city squares. So it's a big square. So where are we going to meet? Over there on the other side of the church. Not allowed to say that. The other side of the. Not allowed to give it any chshivas. The Gemara says, Avodah Zarah that's mentioned in the Torah. The Gemara says that's different. You're allowed to. So the Rebbe says that maybe over here also. The name Balak is mentioned in the Torah, but that doesn't really fully explain the issue. So you're allowed to say it, but why would you say it? And the emphasis Taka, the Balak Tosfos asked a question. It says when the Yidden went out of Mitzrayim, so the Eibusha says where should they rest? Lifnei balts nichachu tachenu alayom, that they should rest. And the Eibusha says, I'll tell you exactly where to be, in front of the Yam. Lifnei Baltzafoin, there was a big idol. It was called Baltzafoin, that was an idol of the Egyptians, and that's where you should camp out, in front of the Baltzafoin. Tosfos says, "Hey, how could you do that? I thought you told me that it's a loch in the Torah. You're not allowed to tell someone Shmor lebitzad avodah zarah ploinus. You're not allowed to tell someone that this is a landmark. Wait, and we'll meet in front of the avodah zarah." So Tosfos answers that this isur is dafka la'adam, not like Kodesh Baruch Hu. So the earth, Sameach, others say, why did the Tosfos have to go like this? We said that all the avodah zarahs that I mentioned, the Torah is mutter to mention. So the Rebbe says, what's a kasha of the earth Sameach? We're allowed to mention the name, but you're not allowed to give it any chashivus. You're not allowed to give it any importance. So here, if the Torah would just mention the name is one thing. The Torah said that where should the Jews camp out? Where should they camp? Lifnei Baltzafoin. So that was the Tosfos kasha. They didn't just mention the name. What's the idea of not saying the name of Avodah Zarah? It's not like there's some tumah over here. You don't want to give, probably that too, but the pashtus and nigla is you want to give it importance. You don't want to validate it. So therefore you don't say the name. It's even worse if you're going to make it a meeting point. So Therefore, Tosfos is bothered. So the shaila is, what's the answer of Tosfos? So what's the Tosfos answering? What's Tosfos answering? Only, what's the answer? So only we have to keep the mitzvahs. Hashem doesn't have to keep the mitzvahs. We all know that the famous, all know the famous because it's a maimer that every Lubavitcher boy says when he's 13 years old. That God does the mitzvahs. He doesn't just tell us, he just goes over the mitzvahs and he sits there and does his own thing. He does exactly the same mitzvahs. So what? So that couldn't be that that's what Tosfos meant. That is a difference to us for Hashem. Obviously, Tosfos meant something. That when we say the name of Avodah Zarah, it's bad. It's good. So like, what's Tosfos really saying? So the Yereim says a puzzling thing. The Yereim says, one of the Rishonim, Balak Tosfos, he says, to explain Tosfos, he says that Avodah Zarah Aksuva B'Torah Mutar Lahaskir Shmo Kivin ShaTorah Iskira Vadan Es Badla. The Torah says the name of Avodah Zarah, for sure that Avodah Zarah became Badla. Which all the Meforshim ask, what are you talking about? The Torah says that you might look at the sun and the moon and serve the Avodah Zarah, the sun and the moon. There's people today in India that serve Avodah Zarah. What are you telling me is bottle? What does Yereim tell me it's bottle? Look at this week's parsha. A story with the Baal Peor. You think it was over? It was not over. The Gemara tells us it's not over. The Gemara tells us a whole bunch of stories. The Gemara tells us a story of Sabata Bar Elas, that he had a Gama leasing company, not a car rental company. He had a donkey rental company, and so he once a shiksa came. So he went with her, with the gomel, with the chamor, with the donkey, and then she stopped at a certain place because she served Avodah Zarah Peor. So she figured on the way she cannot this, yeah. So she a mitzvah. So she went in there, and he said, "What do you do?" So she said what she did. He said, "Oh, I have to go to the bathroom too." So he went in there and he says, "What to do?" So they told him, first you eat this and you drink some beer. Because there's some nasty stuff you eat and you drink that beer, it's a zayin azos when it goes out. So he followed. I guess the beer was kosher, and then he got an urge, but it was Avodah Zarah. And he wanted to, so he took down his pants and he wiped himself on the nose of the Avodah Zarah. When he walked, he thought that he's a Jew, and he literally, I have you in my acharayim, He did it. He didn't only say it. And he thought he really did. And on his way out, he heard the koimrim, the galachim, saying, "Wow, we never had someone serve the Avodah Zarah as great as this guy.
Sure he did.
He outdid all the worshippers." So the Gemara says, so this guy wanted to know what's the din. So the Gemara says that it's considered shoygig even if he did it b'derech bizoyin, because that's the derech avodas bakach. So he has to bring a korban chatos. But what do we see from the story?
What do they blame
exists.
The Jews that time that exists happened.
They got a hazorah. The Rashi says if he got a hazorah, he would be chayiv mis even if he did it derech bizoyin. He did it b'shoygig. That's why he was only b'chayiv. No, they did it amazing. No, they didn't. They were warned. They had asra, otherwise they wouldn't be killed. And then, so we see that there's still part, and we see it's a whole Perek in Tanakh. Tanakh in Yeshua. So there's the story in Perek Yud Zayin that the Bnei Reuven and Bnei Gad, they conquer the land, and they're moving back to the other side of the Jordan. So they go and they build a big mizbeach, and all the other shvatim say, we don't like what we see. This looks like Avodah Zarah. So they call everyone to Sheila and they say, pick up arms. We're going to kill out Bnei Reuven, Bnei Gad.
24,000.
This is a different story. It ended up sweet. No blood was shed after this. They were careful. They sent a message saying, clarify your intentions. They said, we are still we still remember the terrible story of the Baal Pa'or. This is maybe 14, 15, 16 years after the story of Baal Pa'or. Asher loy tuharnu mimenu adayoin. We haven't cleansed ourselves till today of that idol worshipping. And you're now going to build another idol and another altar? Let us know your intentions, because if that's your intention, there's going to be a war. And if Reuven and Bnei Gad said, no, God forbid, we had no intention of building any idol or any mizbeach for that. We just wanted to build a monument, and our children should know that this is not the mizbeach, but that the mizbeach is the other side of the Yarden, and that they have to go to Shiloh. We just wanted to build a monument for our children to know. And then Pinchas agreed that that was a good idea, and all the Shvatim went back. It was like a war about to happen. It was a standstill. Everyone went back home. But we see from the story that the Jews were very sensitive to Avodah Zarah, because they said, "Don't. This is our problem. We have to expunge Avodah Zarah." Asher lo tuharnu mimenu. The bottom line is, we see Avodah Zarah happening till today. Millions of people who worship Avodah Zarah. So how could the Yereim say Avodah Zarah ksul b'Torah mutal aske shmo kivish haTorah iskira vaden is batla? What do you mean vaden is batla? It was not in this batla. Torah mentions the Baal Pa'or. Baal Pa'or is not batla for many years later. The sun and the moon Avodah Zarah is not batla for many years. There's many Avodah Zarahs that still exist that mention Moilech. The Gemara says, Rabbi Akiva said. And then the Akiva said there's different type of and the Akiva said he saw a guy tie up his father and throw him to the dog, and the dog ate up his father.
Right.
That was his service to Avodah Zarah.
The desire for it.
So we see, okay, but we see that.
Wasn't that
why does the Yereim saying that every Avodah Zarah mentioned the Torah is already in this bottle? What does it mean? It's not bottle. We see historically that the Torah mentioned many Avodah Zarahs that existed for many years later, and some of them exist today. So what does the Yereim mean that Vaden is bottle?
Wasn't it open to the Jewish people at that point in time where they got affected, and then Hashem took it away from them?
Oh, the big Sahara. Okay, but the fact is,
There was a time period where it was a big effect.
right, and that went on for hundreds of years, right? So the question is, what does it mean Vaden is bottle? The Rebbe says the pshat that Vaden is bottle doesn't mean that when the Torah mentioned Baal Pa'or at that moment it was totally bottled. It means that when a Jew learns the Torah, in his mind, when he learns about Baal Pa'or, in his mind, this Avodah Zarah is bottled. Why? What's the point why we're not allowed to mention the name of Avodah Zarah? Why are you not allowed to use it as a landmark? You're giving it legitimacy, you're giving it koved, you're giving it chashivus. You want to eradicate it. The Torah, when the Torah mentions it, the Torah doesn't give it chashivus. On the contrary, the Torah shows its falsehood, like the Navi Yirmiyahu said, "Efes v'hevel v'em ba'em oil." When the Torah shows us how it's nothingness. The Torah tells us a whole story about there was a nation that they were always bringing fruits and offerings to their Avodah Zarah, Moav, Am Kemosh. Then came a war, and their statue was standing there, and they were slaughtered, and their statue did nothing for them. The Torah is, every time the Torah tells us Avodah Zarah, it's not to give it legitimacy. In the contrary, to show us that the emes is that there's only one Eibishter, and Avodah Zarah has nothing to it. Sometimes the Torah tells the story of Avodah Zarah and the punishment to it. Sometimes the story of Avodah Zarah and how it's meaningless, and the Avodah Zarah is nothing. The Torah tells us Avodah Zarah to show us how it's bankrupt, how it's nothing, how it doesn't help, how it's irrelevant. That's so the Torah doesn't give it legitimacy. Adrabah, it destroys the Avodah Zarah. It's like saying, it's like the Rebbe says, for example, think about this. The Torah says, Timche es zecher or zecher amolik. So, but then the Torah says, Zocher es asher salach amolik. So which are you supposed to do? You're supposed to eradicate amolik, you're supposed to remember amolik. Which one are you supposed to? It's not kasha. We remember Amalek in order to eradicate it. We're not remembering Amalek to say, wow, what a great guy. There's Avraham Avinu, Yitzchak Avinu, Yaakov Avinu, who else? Amalek. No, we're saying Zocher Esa Shosach HaMolek. Remember, Amalek is repugnant. Amalek is evil. Amalek is you think you're his friend and he turn around, he stabs you in the back. You can't trust Amalek. If you find him, you gotta kill him. If he smiles, you don't think he's your friend. Kill him before he gets a chance to kill you. Same thing here. When the Torah says name of Avodah Zarah, the koyach of Torah is to show you the truth. Torah's emes. So when the Torah tells you Avodah Zarah, it shows you how the Avodah Zarah is nothing. It's irrelevant. It has no power. It's, for example, the Gemara says you're not allowed to make litzonis. Litzonis is not a good thing. Today in America, it's an industry. Stand-up comedy is an industry.
No, whatever.
Okay, but the Torah says that litzonis, I guess depends which litzonis. But litzonis of Avodah Zarah, the Gemara says, it's kosher. That comedy is kosher. So why? I want to say the name of Avodah Zarah. Again, what's the reason why we're not allowed to say the name of Avodah Zarah? You shouldn't legitimize it. You shouldn't give it chshivas covered. If you're making litzonis, there couldn't be a better way to denigrate something than to make litzonis. It's nothing. There's no value. There's nothing. So that's why the Torah mentions names of Avodah Zarah. That's what the Pshat Tosfos says. A human being is not allowed to say, where are we going to meet? City Square. It's big. We're in the City Square. Right next to the church. Not allowed to say that. Why? Because it gives a cheshivas to it. That's a meeting point. But when the Eibishter says the name of Avodah Zarah, that doesn't give us any cheshivas. Adrabah. It destroys it. Because that's the power of Torah. Like we said before, where the Rebbe said a maimer and the announced Hurrah. When the Rebbe Marash said a maimer, he said Eich Lanegev. That's the koyach of the Torah. The koyach of the Torah is to be mevatel. That's why the Eibishter said, Dafka, the Yidden should rest lifnei bal tzafoin. Even on a simple level, Rashi asks, why did he say that? But the Rashi says, why? Because the Goyim should think that the Jews can't remove themselves. Kosher love Yerasan. The Egyptians can say, you see, we have such a powerful, it's magnetic. Our idol is magnetic. The Jews can't get away from it. Sagar Aleim Amidbar, because the kosher love Yeraseinu. And then they're going to get sucked into the Yamsuf. And that's what Rashi says. Mashgi le'goyim v'yabdim. The whole purpose of this was just to whack out the goyim, to knock out the goyim, to eradicate the goyim. Same thing here. The Gemara says a story of one of the Ma'aroim that said a name of Avodah Zarah. He said, how could they say it? He said, oh, this is a name that's mentioned in the Torah. Okay, so you found the technical thing, why you're allowed to say it. Why did you say it? He said it because apparently this Amoida felt that this Avodah Zarah needs to be crushed. And because he said it as part of Torah, he didn't just say it Avodah Zarah, he said it as a posuk in Torah, he said it as a name of Torah. He had the power to destroy it because every word in Torah is holy. Anoichi Hashem Elokecha and Veitzomdu L'Bal Pa'or, every word has equal kedusha in the Torah. When it becomes Avodah Zarah, it becomes klipa. There's a concept of chaticha nasas nevela. And Basa B'cholov, there's a say that according to the Sfardim, it's only by Basa B'cholov, Ashkenazim, it's by Oli Surim. So if you have a piece of meat and there's a little bit of milk that's into the meat, and there's not 60 or there's not enough, the meat is not big enough to get rid of the taste of the milk. If you taste the meat, you can taste the milk in it. Now it falls into a big pot of stew, a big pot of cholent. Now there is much more than 60 keneged the original little bit of cholov. You say no. It doesn't work because this whole piece, the whole chaticha nasas nevela. Now you need 60 keneged this whole piece because your piece became isur. And not only by basa b'cholov, Ashkenazim are by every isur. If it gets cooked and there's not enough to be mevatel the isur, this whole thing becomes one piece of isur. And now, if this falls into something else, you need to have 60 to be mevatel this. Same thing here. Everything has a spark of kedusha in it. But when it's not in the Torah, when it's a real avodah zarah, even though nothing lives from its el, everything has kedusha in it. The table, the chair, the avodah zarah has kedusha in it. The contrary, if because it fell to such a low place, it must have something very strong spark in it. But it's chaticha nasas nevela. It becomes so removed from kedusha that it becomes one piece of nevela. The whole thing is repugnant. The whole thing is avodah zarah. But when you find the name in the Torah, that destroys the avodah zarah. The Torah has the koyach to crush the avodah zarah. So the same thing here. When a Yid learns the Torah and learns about Bilam and he learns about Balak, in general, there's a whole debate: who is a bigger anti-Semite, Balak or Bilam? If you look at Torah, the Torah says, Micha says, "Zacharna ma yatz Balak." In other words, that according to Micha, Balak was the worst. So when you meet Balak in the street, you don't want to meet him in the street because Balak hates Jews, and he's an anti-Semite, and he's evil, and he's repugnant. But when you meet him in the Torah, Balak in the Torah, that I forget. Balak, when you meet Balak in the Torah and you say his name in the Torah, that destroys Balak. That has the courage to destroy. That's why Minig Yisrael is to call the Seder of Balak, because when you call the Seder of Balak, that has the power to destroy this Balak and all his cousins and his friends, all the Balaks in that generation and subsequent generations. That's why Dafka Minig Yisrael is to call this Parsha Balak. Balak is not only Balak. It's all the Balaks. We're telling a story here, and when we say the name Balak in the Torah, and when we give the Pasha the name Balak, that gives that koyach, like the Rebbe is saying the Maimer, and saying Hurrah, or the Rebbe Marash saying the Maimer, and saying Heichel Anogav, it has a certain, the Torah that we learn has a power to destroy this Balak and all the other Balaks, and not only to destroy. The story of the Pasha is that what happens from Balak, not only Balak is destroyed, not only is he killed, but he ends up causing that the Yidden should get the greatest blessings. Where do we learn all about Mashiach Tzidkenu? It's all laid out in the Nevuah from Bilam. So not only is he destroyed, and that's Be'emes, the whole promise of Liyosid Lavi. The whole Nevuah of Liyosid Lavi is that the Goyim is, not only will they not try to hurt the Jews, but they'll be there to help the Jews. They will be there to serve the Jew. It'll be their honor and their pleasure to serve the Jew. They will see it as their life's mission to serve the Jew. So that's what happens in Losid Love. So that starts with Balak. Balak tries to destroy the Jew. Not only is he destroyed, but he ends up being the catalyst for the Jews getting the bracha of Yemais Mashiach. And that's really what Yemais Mashiach is all about. That not only the Klippa is destroyed,
But they also wanted to make part of the prayer because they wanted to put it in Jewish.
so we see that's motivated, right? So that's a Pshat. That's why we say Dafke, the Parsha is called Balak, because when Balak is in the Torah, it gives a koyach to destroy Balak. Eber shall hofen that we should destroy not only that Balak, but every Balak, the Balaks that are around. There's a lot of Balaks that are around today. And it should all be destroyed, and we should
Balak is
see.
black. Balak black.
They come in all colors. They come in all colors. All of them should go the way of the first Balak. Should be zoichet to see the kiyum of the nevuah of Mashiach Tzidkenu.
Because to stop the
Everybody wants to stay with this generation to help out his people.
It's cold, but it's still
No.